Thank you. My name is Heather McIntyre, and firstly, I come here as a concerned citizen, and secondly, I am affiliated with the Central Australian Fact-Free Alliance, but I am not representing them today.
So you're not speaking on their behalf today?
I am not speaking on their behalf today.
Yes.
And my name is Lisa Gray, and I'm here as a concerned citizen as well.
Thank you. Yes.
Okay. So I've been here before on your last round of hearings, and I come again. Firstly, I appear, as I've mentioned, as a concerned citizen, and secondly, as a member of CAFA. I'm not a scientist, but I appear today with grave concerns about the future of the NT. While I appreciate the work you have done on tabling this report and with its 120 recommendations to mitigate risk, there, however, remains, as indicated in your report, a risk or risks. I can't help but agree with Rachel Carson, and I quote, that no witchcraft, no enemy action had silenced the rebirth of new life in this stricken world. The people had done it themselves. My concern is the potential catastrophic consequences, being the intention of your report, that unchecked or even checked industrialisation of a gas industry can have on humanity and its environments wherever it takes place. I acknowledge it's not your job to make a decision on either the hay or the nay of the initiation of a new gas industry, but perhaps given your report that acknowledges the risks in processing and proceeding, I live in hope that the report may lead to a new paradigm in which the NT government may move to another source of power generation that negates all risk of contamination on all levels and in all categories to the environment, the water table, and mitigates the need to again dispossess Indigenous people from their cultural lands. It appears to me the elements to make such a decision are courage and bravery, foresight and vision. I do wonder if the NT government is made of such substance or characteristics. Although I have read your report, again, I am not a scientist. So I'm wondering if you could answer a couple of questions for me. One of them is about water. There is 40 million litres used for each well to be fracked during the 20 stages of the fracking process. That's one frack, I gather. However, my understanding of industry standards indicates each well can be fracked 8 to 10 times. So I suppose I'm wondering if that is correct. Meaning one well equals 300 to 400 million litres during its lifetime, possibly. Each pad will have 10 wells. That's an awful lot of water. My concern is about water security. How will this happen? We just have to look at the moment, or we are reminded of water security, in that Cape Town is on countdown to 0 day at the end of April because of the lack of water. You have also suggested that the amount of water required for this to happen, this fracking to happen, can be transported where the groundwater is inadequate. I guess I'm wondering what that would look like in terms of transport and environmental degradation as a result. Given the number of wells proposed in the Bindaloo Basin, let alone the rest of the territory, and the life of a well, which can be decades long, how is water security going to be managed? Does another question would be, does the 120 recommendations to mitigate the risks of fracking apply to the exploration process as well? I'm not clear on that. The words often used in the report is about the production process. So I'm not sure if that's the same as the exploration process. So therefore, do the rules apply to the exploration process as well? Therefore, how many wells will be fracked in the name of exploration? So therefore, I ask, how many wells will be fracked in the name of exploration without a strategic regional environmental and baseline assessment, if in fact exploration can take place without these guidelines? given that the fracking process for exploration is the same as actually fracking, the production process. In light of this, so I refer to the, so I suppose I'm not naive to think that an industry will not happen. So in light of that, in some of the, I've read the report. There are some, I suppose, changes that I would like to see in some of the report. I'm not going over all the report, I'm just going over some section of it that pertains to some water and also exploration. So I go to recommendation number 1, that before any, or 7.1, sorry, that before any production licence is granted to extract onshore shale gas, that the Water Act be amended to require gas companies to obtain water extraction licence under the Act, that the government introduce a change. So I'd like to have that in there, that this must be before exploration. Then I go to 7.4, and I can read it out, but basically I'd like to say that a strategic regional environmental and baseline assessment, including a regional groundwater model, be developed and undertaken for any prospective shale gas basin before any exploration, rather than production. So if we change the words. Then I was going to 7.7, that actually, this talks about drilling near existing communities, so that the minimum, so I ask, I suppose, that the minimum distance to existing or proposed groundwater bores be 2 kilometres as a minimum, and actually it's mandated as the absolute distance, rather than it be open to negotiation by perhaps a landowner who may not be quite as informed about what happens in the process. And that's point 1 in 7.7. In point 2, that the strategic regional environmental and baseline assessment must be completed before exploration. Now I jump to so 7.8, that re-injection of wastewater into deep aquifers and conventional reservoirs should be prohibited. And that's the end, perhaps, of that recommendation, and we exclude the rest of it. And in recommendation 7.13, that the re-injection of treated or untreated wastewaters, including brines, into aquifers not be permitted. And we leave the recommendation there and we exclude the rest of it. And I go to 7.13. If I can find that here. Oh, yeah. That the re-injection of treated, I think I just said that, didn't I? Yeah, 7.8 and 7.13, that those last aspects are excluded. Then I go to page 4.23, which I'd like to say remains, which is about us being funded, I think.
Sorry, page 4 point?
Clause.
Do you mean section or recommendation?
Recommendation.
Sorry, okay, so that was recommendation. Sorry, can you repeat that?
Recommendation 4.23, I suppose it's the urge that the government take on this particular recommendation, that where litigation is brought generally in the public interest.
Oh, you mean 14? You mean 14.23?
Yes, sorry, what did I say?
4.
Oh,
4.
My apologies.
No, that's all right. That's all right. I just want to be clear that.
Okay. No, 14.23. That remains, and we, very much so.
Sorry, so you approve of that recommendation?
I do approve of that, yes. And there are quite a number that I do approve of if this process was going to, but I'm not sure I can name them all.
No, we're really more interested in the ones you want changes to. That's what we're...
That's what I gather.
Yep.
Yeah. So 14.26 also, that the government consider developing and implementing a tiered regulatory regulatory model such as the one in South Australia, whereby gas companies with a demonstrated record of good governance and compliance require a lower level of monitoring with a corresponding reduction in regulatory fees? My personal feeling is that needs to be removed. Why, and I suppose the question is, why would you suggest a tiered approach to any regulatory framework you are suggesting the government should implement? For me, why should these companies have a lower level of monitoring or pay less fees? For me, this is rather like trusting the management of the Commonwealth Bank. If with regulations they have found to be laundering millions of dollars for years and also responsible for manipulating the market with interest rates for their own gain, therefore, and where everybody thought they could be trusted, why would you therefore give consideration to these people, mining companies, notoriously known for manipulation of the market or perhaps the environment, or degradation, more to the point, to the environment? So therefore, I would urge you to delete this recommendation completely. For me, there have been a number of programs and articles on radio, television, newspaper and reports. I guess there will always be two sides to every argument. Hence, I stand on the side of the no-go community. I feel this is a senseless direction to move in, given the lengths anyone would have to go to mitigate or reduce the risk, but never eliminate the risk. I feel if Scotland can move to 100% renewable energy by 2020, although they achieved this in 2017, why can't the Northern Territory, when we have 365 days of the year of sunshine, move in the same direction? Again, it takes courage, bravery and a vision to go against the current pressure from the mining companies and the federal government. However, wherever this decision falls, I refer to your report on page 49. Which says, based on the scientific evidence it has examined to date, the panel has concluded that there is a substantive lack of baseline data required to inform understanding of the Territory's unique environmental values, adequately assess the risk profile of any onshore shale gas industry in the NT, facilitate strategic water and land use planning, and fully inform issues associated with social impacts, human health and Aboriginal people and their culture. Given the magnitude of the problem, the panel has provided specific guidance on the scope and content of the environmental assessment and baseline studies required to develop any onshore shale gas industry in the NT if the government decides to lift the moratorium. The panel strongly recommends that such assessments must be carried out prior to any production approvals being granted. Therefore, for baseline studies to take place, which could take years, 3 years, 5 years or longer, therefore, I would urge that the moratorium remain in place for the duration because there are really too many risks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Let me just explain, but in no way seeking to change your mind, but the tiered approach in South Australia is really a carrot and stick approach, and that has worked quite well in that jurisdiction. So effectively, and I'll at the risk of oversimplification, what happens is everybody starts off on the assumption that they are a bad operator and they have maximum surveillance, maximum monitoring, maximum fees. Then over time, if they prove to be a good operator, they sort of slide down the scale with less compliance needed, less fees applying. The South Australians, and we have visited the regulator there twice and looked at their model, have indicated to us, and it seems to bear out on the figures, that proves to be a very powerful incentive to companies to do the right thing and to actually abide by the conditions of their approvals, because nobody wants to be subjected to more surveillance and higher fees. So it's actually worked very well as a mechanism to ensure compliance, as opposed to, well, everybody's just stuck in the same boat, so there's less incentive perhaps on one view to comply. So that's the South Australian approach. Perhaps it needs to have a little bit more explanation in the final report, but that's why that recommendation is there.
Thank you. We can only hope. Yeah. Thank you.
Any questions? Yes, Professor Hart.
Just your comment about the amount of water used. The 40 million that you
litres.
talked about, 40 megalitres, 40 megalitres, million.
Yeah.
That's for a whole frac. So in terms... no, not one frac, the whole lot. So generally you can work on about 2 megalitres, 2 million, for
which
the
says
drilling,
that. Yes, it says
and
that.
about 1 to 2 megalitres for each frac. So if they do 20 fracs, then that's 2 plus 40, 42. So the 40 is for the whole
Duration.
hydraulically fracked
Yeah.
one well.
One well, that's
Yeah,
right.
so then
Okay.
you multiply.
Okay,
Yep.
great. Thank you for
Good,
that.
no trouble.
Yep.
Any further questions or comments? Yes, Dr. Smith.
Just one clarification. When you requested or suggested a change in the offset distance to 2 kilometres, what was the basis of that recommendation to us? Why that particular number?
I think it's just a precautionary measure, really, at this stage. A precautionary measure, I think both in noise factors, as in water contamination, as in transport to a community. So it's a number of aspects.
Okay, thank you. I think the number that you were referring to in the recommendation was more about drawdown potential
Yes,
in
it was, 1
groundwaters.
metres. Yeah.
So that was the rationale, and that was
Yeah.
based on some data sets. But I was just
That's right. It was suggested that it was about 1 metre if that drawdown change. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming to present today. Thank you.
Thank you.